Hello out there. So, here we are again. You know, it's been quite a roller coaster since I made the decision to go ahead and start up the channel again and, you know, do readings and share some stuff. And then this thing happened, right? Where I finally just sort of came to the conclusion that if I'm going to approach this channel authentically, then it's going to be more than just readings or, you know, maybe even some of the more advanced stuff that I do with my private sessions, soul talk stuff, you know, looking back and getting rid of some things, identity work, this type of things. And I came to the conclusion that I was going to focus on that more than, you know, just readings, although I do want to do readings, and I love doing tarot on every level. It's just kind of part of my, it's part of my vocabulary and how I speak to the world, right? Now, that said, I made a decision to share a piece of information, and that piece of information that I decided to share was something that came into my life about 20 years ago. And I told a little bit of the story yesterday's stream, and so I won't bore you with the details, but suffice it to say, I came to some conclusions that led me to a body of knowledge that was sort of unlocked. And I've been sitting on it for quite some time. And that said, since that time, it's been 20 years. You know, my understanding of the subject, of my approach to the tarot and how I teach, how I learn, how I explain has evolved. But this particular piece of knowledge has not. It stayed as true as it was when I first discovered it. And so I decided to share some things, and I went through this progression of kind of going through different ideas that lead to this spot. And so I made the decision to go ahead and to just reveal this idea. And more than just revealing the idea is to reveal the fact that it's something that it is very effective for a very specific type of magical working, which is frankly the only and the most important type of magical working. And it's something I've described on the channel here. With respect to how I approach reading for people, you know, people will come to me with a question or a concern or a desire with some type of question related to how do I get it, how do I avoid it, what do I do, and so forth. And that's the lower self misinterpreting the desires of the higher and looking for that to be fulfilled. And it's not going to be unless you're seeking the thing you actually want. And, you know, one of the ways to determine what that is to do the work that we've all heard, find your inner self and, you know, all these things. And, you know, there are techniques that seem to be at least psychologically effective from the respect of empowering the ego. A lot of the work that's out there related to finding the self is really just ego building in disguise. And they mean well, don't get me wrong. But what it does is that it's built this religion of I worship. And I worship it doesn't work. You know, I've spoken before how on the way down the descent, this infinite universal consciousness that we are all connected to and part of, and it went through some stuff during that descent. And one of the things that it went through toward the end of that journey was it broke up into a lot of pieces, and all of us were a little piece of that. And so when we look at somebody who, you know, maybe is someone that we wouldn't normally consider a positive influence in our life, or somebody that is in pain, or somebody that is, you know, downright evil, we have to consider what it is we're actually looking at. Because oftentimes, that's simply a person who is broken and doesn't realize it. They have no connection with their higher self. Aleister Crowley called it conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. I call it soul talk. But it really is the goal of the work of every mystic. Because the goal of the work of this path is to find the truth. And the only place that you can find the truth is in the darkness. And there is no darkness in the world. The darkness is in yourself. And so that's where we need to look. And now that's a very hard thing to do, this achieving conversation, right? Quieting the mind or quieting the soul. The fact is that, how do you hear something that isn't audible? Well, that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today in the Tarot Talk, because it's time for me to finally reveal the last piece of this whole puzzle of sort of rapid fire stream of consciousness information that was designed to kind of elicit a certain emotional response to the information. Yeah. And whether or not you consciously understood the information, subconsciously, due to the nature of the archetypes that were built into it, it kind of just gels with you. Okay, well, I understand the airy part of fire means air is intelligence and communication, fire is will, so it's the communication of the will, whereas the fiery part of air is the idea of the will and communication, so it's the will to communicate as opposed to communicating the will. And in the latter version, the fire of the air, the will to communicate, you have to determine what it is that they're communicating. And so there's other factors that you could look into to make that decision. As far as the reading process, right? We talked about the deacons, we talked about the courts, we've talked about the two very important components, which is the idea of the divine order, that the cards need to be in a specific order to work, and that order is the wand, cup, sword, and pentacle. And then we're going to go from there. Because what I discovered is the idea of the reversal and how important that is with respect to the placement of this order in the higher world when we're trying to interrogate it using the tarot. Turns out that the suits need to be changed up a little bit. And suddenly it works. And there was a higher realization that took place as well that built this system. And so what I'm introducing today, I talked about the new order for the AEON. I talked about the new the vortex that's created by the tension between the natural order and the elemental, the higher and lower, creating a vortex that creates possibility in between those eddies and flows. And then we talked about the algorithm for the new AEON. And the algorithm is basically the code to unlock this system. It's the way that you apply it to your readings, and so that you can get that higher level voice involved in the reading as well, rather than us when we put the cards down, we read the cards, we interpret it, and we can get very good information. I've read cards that way for a very long time, and I'd say probably 80% of my readings are that, with the exception of when I'm specifically reading to find that voice and to reveal it to the seeker. But that said, you can take this system and apply it to your current readings. You don't just have to use it on its own, but it's useful in both cases. And then the order in the vortex, this is really an important talk today with respect to who the courts really are. Which one's the listener? Which one's the speaker? Which one's ignoring everybody? And which one's too busy crying? And we're going to talk about that. And then the beautiful soul. There's an offer I put out yesterday. It's a standing offer and a little message related to the inner order. And then obviously we're going to jump to readings and do some other fun stuff. But the first thing that I wanted to do today to sort of just set the tone of what we're talking about over this past several streams that have been very intense and have been culminating till last night when I revealed everything as a truth in secret. You know, very oftentimes what I do is I talk about the difference between these different bodies of knowledge and how that's accessed and how we approach that subject. Very oftentimes people don't even realize, or maybe not have the perspective, that there is another perspective, right? Like there is another way to look at the information. But if you are one of those people that looks at the thing that you've been told and it's not satisfying, and you're seeking the truth in that statement, then you're probably a candidate for the inner order. The outer order is available to everybody, and that's the basic outer meaning of the world. The inner order, however, is not available to everybody, and it requires ears to hear, and it requires permission, and specifically it requires an invite. It's by invitation only. And then there's this special place that has a couple of names, but the important name is the Inner Sanctum. The Inner Sanctum, most people don't even know exist, that are literally standing immediately next to it every day. And every time they go into their lodge or their temple, or they do their work individually as a solo practitioner of some of these arts, they might not even be aware of the fact that there is another place, there is another temple. And it's a very special place, because it's a place where once you walk through the door into that temple of the Inner Sanctum, right there in front of you is you. The conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel, the soul talk, it flows openly and infinitely, and it can't be shut off. It's beautiful. Now, the problem with that inner order is that you can't just walk in the door, and you can't just pay your dues, and you can't sneak your way in through nepotism. It's invite only, but the people who are members can't invite you. The only person that can invite you is you. And there's a last important final secret when it comes to the inner order compared to the Inner Sanctum. The inner order is only ever available to members. However, the Inner Sanctum is available to anyone who comes to the knowledge. And so, that said, in my experience with organizations, or my experience with group working, or my experience even with solo work and the self-initiation process, I have come to a place where I believe I'm in the position to, on a group level, rather than just on a one-on-one, which is what I usually do, wake this up in people. I've done it before. It's empirical. I've experienced it with people and seen them walk through that door and come back out changed forever. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do here with this new deck. The reason that I'm putting this new deck out now is that I believe that I'm finally ready to express it in a way visually on paper that can be given to somebody else, and them use it as a tool to do their own work for this conversation. So if I'm not available, or somebody that has a similar training, then they can use it at least initially to get a vibe for that circumstance, right? And through conversation, whether it's in a group setting or individually with a guide, you can take that tool even across the world and have it in front of you, and that conversation can take place over the internet, over the phone, or otherwise, and that will just wake this knowledge up to you. And so I think it's prudent at this point to show you the deck. Oh, Lauren, Luana, how's it going? I just saw something pop over and I looked over at the chat. I appreciate you guys popping in. Yeah, so this is going to be very special. I'm revealing the final piece of this puzzle, of this magical system that I've developed over the past 20 years. And the culmination of that is the deck, the tools to actually, because, study is great. Reading is great, right? Although, like I said yesterday, I did all the reading, right? So you don't have to. Don't worry. I did all the reading, so you don't have to. But at the end of the day here, study's good. It allows you to have conversations with people that are interested in the subject, and you can learn from the conversation. You can teach and learn at the same time, and you can everybody kind of grow your understanding of, and so that's good. But understanding is useless without action. It's, what's the point? Like, I want to be able to take the knowledge and do something with it today to actually create change in my life. I'm not looking at having this cool subject that I can talk about once every 4 years when I bump into another nerd that's interested in numerology or in sacred geometry or in, the Hermetic arts or, these type things. So, it's time. The tool is ready, and I'm ready to be able to share it. And so this is the tool. What I have here, incidentally, just to kind of set the tone here. I have a couple of tarot decks. Right, this is the Hermetic Tarot, which I use in my spreads related to that order in Vortex, which I spoke about. And this is the Thoth Deck, which is used for the lower world of that. So this is the higher world and the lower world of those spreads that are related to that technology I talked about. The idea of the Vortex, the idea of the divine order. And by understanding the knowledge of the divine order and the Vortex allows us to unlock the algorithm. What this is a series of steps. What is an algorithm? An algorithm is a series of steps. If, then. Do I want a cup of coffee? Question number 1. Are you thirsty? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Do you want something hot or cold? Hot. Okay. Do you want tea or coffee? Coffee. That's an algorithm. It's the same idea. What steps do you take under what circumstance to get to a specific end? And what's the end here? The end is entry into the inner sanctum. Conversation takes place there. Just to be clear, this deck does not provide you with conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. What it provides you with is the keys to the sanctum. Once you're in there, the conversation's up to you. But it will occur. It can't not once you're there. And so the purpose of this is to unlock that experience, to elicit that experience through conversation. I've mentioned it many times. Some things cannot be taught. They can only be learned. So the information comes in, but you process it, and then you come to the conclusion on your own internally. It's not something that can be spoken to you, and you go, oh, now I get it. And so the purpose of this whole system, why I developed it to begin with, was once I had the experience and I saw that I felt there was a way to be able to elicit it in others, and I succeeded at that over and over, and I saw people waking up to this, I realized I need to develop a tool that I can use, that I can do this on a group scale. And so here it is. So what I have out on the table here is these 2 decks, and then I have a wand. This is a fire wand, and it has a bird on top. And then we have here, which I usually use to represent the Princess of Pentacles that's coming out. Uncle Noob, how's it going? You got here just in time. The white cat, which I use typically for my Princess of Pentacles. This cat is usually sitting there with her hands up, offering to the world her pentacle. Right. And we've talked about that story. We're going to talk about it again in the next segment on a different level, but same idea. And so I usually use her as my Princess of Pentacles, and today she's representing the white lion. And so that said, these 2 individuals are representing the wand and the pentacle in the working today. Okay, now I just have here my normal Rider-Waite mini. Just want that image to kind of be in your mind as we move through the evening. That's the 2 of Cups. 2 individuals offering cups to each other. One of them is in the process of reaching out to take the other. And the energy that's created in between that spirals up until it becomes the winged lion. The union of the bird and the lion. Consciousness given wings. What do you do when you have wings? You go up. Okay, just to be clear. So that said, I just wanted to put that image in everybody's mind before we begin. Okay, what we're looking at here is the 2 of Cups. 2 of Cups, okay? And just, this is an image that you want to keep in your mind as we do this work. Okay, so that said, let me put this in the box so it's out of the way. Let's pull this deck out and begin this process. I also want to thank everybody who has come with me during this journey. I've had a lot of bumps during this journey. Throwing this system together to be able to pop up different information that was relevant and set up the cameras in a way that is conducive to sharing the information. You know, having a poor internet connection in the mountains, it's a good connection until it just cuts off 3-4 times during the most important live stream of 20 years in my life. But it got done, sort of. And so, His Royal Luliness, how's it going? So that said, I appreciate everybody that's followed me through the frustration, followed me through what seems to be drinking water out of a fire hose of information suddenly, when it was more of a lighthearted kind of tarot channel. And so I really appreciate that. We're going to get back there. I thought I was going to be done yesterday, but I attempted to sleep after the stream yesterday. And I laid down, and 2 hours later I woke up with this compulsion that, nope, you build the tool and offer it tomorrow and make sure it's available. And so, and we're going to be speaking about it a little bit on a different level later as well. And so let me just put these decks aside here, and we'll pull out the new deck for the new AEON. Okay, now what we're looking at here, I have been to the Inner Sanctum, and I'm tired of being alone in there. And so I was thinking to myself while I was in there once, we really need to share this. We really need to share. The world is in a bad place, and this will help people psychologically. This will help people physically to behave better to their bodies. This will help people to behave better to the people in their lives. This will help people to make proper decisions. This is, and I don't mean to sound lofty about it. This is the entire whole body of Kabbalah in one deck. The entire body of knowledge of the Kabbalistic system in this little pile of cardboard. This is the entire body of tarot. All of it in this little package right here. The entire body of the system of alchemy is in this little yellow piece of cardboard that I threw together in 6 hours. Why? Because the knowledge was in my head. I knew the algorithm, and so it was a matter of my hand moving fast enough to draw it out. The truth told openly. And so that said, what we're looking at here is just a cardboard. This is a prototype. I am absolutely going to be mass producing this deck immediately. This is going to be something that once I've ironed out a couple of things and I have the right individuals that are with me in this process, some of them might even be in this stream or now or in the very near future, we are going to discuss this magical system, its application, and I'm having the deck mass produced. I'm putting together a course that will include the work itself, which is to elicit an actual, not a philosophical, not a spiritual, an actual lucid communication with your higher self. The rules are here. The instructions are here. Not to mention, everything that is in this little package right here is here, all over, okay? All of these books, all of this information is wrapped up into this one little package that again, why I've decided to share it now, I actually can't tell you. The only reason that I'm sharing it right now is the idea that I have the compulsion to, and I can't deny it. It's so intense that I can't sleep. I haven't even changed my clothes since yesterday. And it comes down to having this compulsion to share this in a way that is actionable. What I'm doing here on the stream is good because it's hopefully going to elicit a reaction in some people that will wake them up to either knowledge they didn't know they always knew, or put them on a path of study, or both. And that is my goal in this world. That's my lower world goal. My higher self wants there to be an actionable tool that is able. I want to be able to hand you this little piece of cardboard and you go home and find yourself. And I believe that I've done that. And so that's why I'm sharing it. And so let's take a look at the deck. What I have here is a piece of cardboard that I just cut up and to wrap around the deck. This is a prototype, so this is not the the box. This is the box until the box is designed. However, I like the yellow because it represents air. And what is air but the idea of communication? Something tells me, though, that it's also going to wind up being blue. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to wind up just mixing the yellow and blue, which is communication and reception of the communication, the thing that is receiving the word. But that said, green or fading from blue into yellow. We'll have to see. Yellow and blue are opposite on the color scale. So what we're looking at here is, and people think that yellow, like red and blue are opposite. They aren't. Red and blue are not opposite. And if you don't believe me, stare at this yellow for a moment and then look at a gray wall, and you're going to see blue. If that were the case, when you stared at red and did that, you would see blue. But that's not what you see. And essentially, if you look at a color wheel, the opposite of red on the RGB scale is cyan, not blue. The opposite of green is magenta. The opposite of yellow is blue. That's a very important component when you're doing color magic work. So that said, let me jump to the correct screen here. And now what I have wrapped up in here right now is simply the deck, which I wound up using the cardboard that was left over from last night's stream. If you guys recall last night's stream, there was a little segment that I put together to kind of make your own deck, and it was going to be basically a court card slash deacon deck that kind of was like a little oracle to be able to get your signs and your planets and look at some influences. And it was really a way to wake people up to the fact that you could really just cut up some cardboard and throw together a deck, and it'd be more powerful than the most beautiful, expensive deck on the planet if you knew how to use it. Because as we've all learned from Eliphas Levi, an imprisoned person with no other book than the tarot, if we knew how to use it, could be in a few years, have universal knowledge and so forth. And so the idea here is that you can have the greatest tools in the world. If you don't know how to use them, they're useless. They're not tools. A tool is something that is a usable thing, and what makes it usable? Your ability to use it, right? So, if I've seen people all the time like grab a piece of paper as a toothpick. It's not a toothpick, but it's a tool. And prior to that, it was just a piece of paper. So the tool's not enough. You need to know how to use it. And so the reason that I'm doing this is not just to provide the deck or a little white book, although I am providing a little white book. And it's funny because the little white book is the microcosm of the deck. So this is going to be the little white book. Let's start there. This is the little white book. Now, we saw this yesterday, okay? This is the thing that came to me 20 years ago when I first discovered the vortexes, and then I discovered this information. It all flew together. It was all just like a big explosion of truth that just rushed into my soul and filled me up forever. And so now here I am with the intent of trying to share that. And we talked about the idea of, with respect to the tarot, essentially this is the tarot that we all know. This is what we think the tarot is. There's 4 suits in a divine order. We talked about the order. I'm not going to reiterate. If you want to learn it, go to the prior stream or contact me. And this is something that I'm going to be teaching immediately upon whoever would like to do it from this stream forward. And so I will be teaching this directly to individuals on a one-on-one basis, starting after this stream. And we will be making the deck. There's only 22 cards, and that's not accidental. The process of doing that is super simple. It's way easier than yesterday's, and you'll see. And so what the idea here is that I used to think, that this was the tarot. You got these cards, and they have the suits, and there's different the 1 through 10 or ace through 10 in the suits, and then you have these other cards which are a little different, the majors, and then you have these other cards that are a little different, and they're the courts, and they're different than these, and then the aces are separate from. So it's not 1 through 10, it's actually 2 through 10, and then if you take that out, it actually is part of the princess, which is really giving birth to the whole. There's a truth in distilling this information. Now, is it important that you know that? It's up to you. I chose to, right? I chose to devote my life to the pursuit of the intricacies of this system and how it ties into these others. And so it's pretty complex. But what I realized is that the complexity is not necessary. It's important to me, but it's not important to me. What's important to me is understanding the behind the scenes, the underneath, at the core of the system, what's driving it. I've said before on the channel here that basically the tarot is the pictorial representation of the tree of life, and the Kabbalah is super complicated on purpose because it's addressing and talking about the simplest of ideas, and it takes the most complex language to address the simplest of ideas. It takes the simplest language to express the most complicated. And that's hard to navigate mentally and spiritually. But so we have this vocabulary that we develop over the years, right? And we use it, and it's useful. But then we discovered that there is, it's not only the pictorial representation of the Kabbalistic tree of life, which is really complicated. The tarot is a distilled down version of that body of knowledge. So we can use the tarot to access the truth of this beautiful system of the descent, the fall from grace, whatever the case, and then into flesh, like God as human being. And so it's a beautiful a symbol system. And now we learned some things with respect to that, right? And one of the things that it came to me was this idea of what it meant, what the abyss was. I was able to internally understand what the abyss was. And then it finally dawned on me after reading all kinds of books, Crowley, DuQuette, all the Pike, Rachel Pollack, just you name it. There's so many different, and none of them really address this answer. Even Crowley, who he devoted all of his writings to this specific great work, which is achieving this conversation. And all the years that I read that, I didn't understand that's what he was even talking about. I didn't even know what he meant by the Holy Guardian Angel. And once I discovered it, I started sharing it with everyone, and they were all like, "What are you talking about, guy? That's not what he meant." Yeah, it is. And so. And I challenge anyone out there that's a high-ranking person in the OTO to challenge me publicly that this is not the secret of the OTO, because I promise you it is. I believe that to be true, and I'm not a member. But I don't need to be a member because I am in the Inner Sanctum. So the fact is that, the truth of the Inner Sanctum is you don't need to be a member of the organization to have the knowledge if it comes to you. And so this is what I shared yesterday, right? We have the idea that during the descent of the spirit down to earth, the suits are different on top, and they twist. How do I know that? Because this is how it appears in our world. And if this is how it appears in our world, the upper world must be opposite, with the exception of the pillars that are fixed. So these two signs don't move, and when we go to the upper world, the two middle signs do. Not only do they swap places, but they turn upside down, because everything is backwards once you pass through the abyss. So just to be clear here, what I'm talking about is that when the soul of the divine spirit descended from the tree and passed through the abyss, the two middle suits, the non-fixed ones, not the ones attached to the pillar, the pillars on either side, but the ones in the middle, swap and go upside down. Now look at the beautiful diagram that creates. Right? This was really profound. When I first looked at this picture, I was in a different place in my studies. Obviously, again, it was 20 years less mature in my studies. It was so profound. This is a cup pouring onto the sword. This is the sword dripping into the cup. There's a rightness to that. There's a beauty to it that's really, really hard to wrap your head around, other than it totally makes sense. If you look at the tarot the way it is, and you have a cup going into a cup, and they're both up, it's like they would go into each other, but one of them gets nothing and the other one's blocked from getting anything. So they can't share. This is not sharing. But what this is that, it's giving and receiving. Giving and receiving. And what we talked about is that, God bestows, humans receive. That is all we can do. The giver, the receiver. And so this is a very beautiful interpretation of the way that we access this knowledge in our world. Why is that? Because we are in the world post-descent. The descent has happened. The Spirit of God descended to flesh. The Big Bang happened. And we are in the middle of that pre-ascension, post-descension. That's an important point here. Are we here? No. Oh, so we're here? No. Where are we? We're in the middle. We're in between. We're in between the transition of the descent and the ascent. We're in between the transition of going from falling to rising, right? We always talk about how the Spirit of God fell, we're going to rise, and we're going to meet somewhere in between. Well, that's a lie. We can't meet in between because we're the ones who fell. We're the ones that are going to rise. It's the idea of the born at the end of time and living at the beginning. It's a cycle of that. So that said, this system I revealed yesterday, and it was useful, I think. And that there needs to be a little bit of, now this isn't manipulatable, and the system, and one of the reasons that I wanted to make the deck finally is the fact that when I do this work for my clients, or if I do this work for myself, I use 2 tarot decks, and there's a lot of manipulation that goes on, and it's kind of really, you need a lot of space, frankly, especially if you're a fan like I have. This is a small Thoth. The Thoth I use for magical work is almost like a third again bigger. It's a pretty big card, and they're so obnoxious. They don't fit anywhere. You can't shuffle them easy, but they're really, there's a power to them. It's almost like you're holding a book. But they don't fit very well, and this is basically the notes. And you can take these notes and you set them out, and then when you're doing the reading, if you haven't committed this system to memory, you put the notes out and you can do the reading and you can refer to your notes, right? And so now when I designed this deck, I have two goals in mind. The first goal of the deck is to give you a tool that you can apply to your tarot to have a better understanding of the creation of the tarot, of where it comes from, of how it's lined up, why it's lined up, what are the actual interplays of these energies, because it's pretty complex. You have 22 cards split into 3 different piles of 3, 7, and 12, and then you have, again, the math is very, and the interplay of the elements. It's not a complicated system when you get to know it, but it's very hard to approach the intermediate to high level because of its level of complexity. And there's something to be said for distilling things down to their simplest forms. That's one of the reasons that I'm such a fan of Robert M. Place's work that he's done with the alchemical tarot. He took the alchemical tarot and he whittled it down even further and gave us this beautiful Marseille version. And then he whittled it down even further and he gave us this like single symboled version of the alchemical process in the tarot form. It's a beautiful deck. But clearly he understands the value of the distillation of the information, so that you're sort of getting rid of all the extra, so that the part of you that speaks archetype can just know it. That's what this is. What this is, as I mentioned, because that was a crazy bold statement, in these little pieces of cardboard that are extra from last night's arts and crafts debacle, is all of human knowledge. That's right. It's a replacement. Okay, here we go. It's a replacement for the Bible. The Bible teaches us faith and to pray. This teaches us not faith. What does faith do? Faith stops us from seeking. I have a question. Oh, you don't need answers, you need faith. Okay, I'll stop seeking and just have faith. I want to talk to God. Okay, well, you have to pray, and then, I'll talk to him for you. Oh, okay. What this is, rather than teaching you how to pray, it's teaching you how to listen. That's the opposite. Prayer is speaking to God. Soul talk is listening, and it's actual. Okay, and the second thing that this does is it gives you access to the knowledge in a way that doesn't require you to have a degree in, language arts. You were born knowing this language. And so when I say it replaces the Bible, it replaces the Kabbalah. It doesn't replace anything. It unlocks. This is the key to unlocking the Bible, the key to unlocking Kabbalah, the key to unlocking the Hermetic arts and the Hermetic principles, the key to unlocking the Torah, the key to unlocking the tarot in its complete form. Everything is here, okay? So, let us begin. First thing that we have here, I'm going to show you I'm going to keep the notes out just to reference them visually for you guys so you can see what we're talking about while I go through this. But you won't need this any longer. This is really just here for you guys, okay? This is not part of the deck, and it won't be included in it. The little white book, so to speak, which, by the way, this is it. This will be the little white book. It's just going to be done better. I'm going to do it properly. Again, I'm rushing through this process. You wouldn't know it, but I'm a professional graphic designer. I'm just the shoemaker's son going without shoes. I don't have time to do my own graphics and make the fonts correct and all that. I just don't. I need to get this information out. And when I have time to breathe, I'm actually going to, this channel is going to be gorgeous. Trust me. Because I'm not going to be the shoemaker's son without shoes anymore. I'm going to do for myself. Right now, I'm doing for you guys. I just want to get it out as much as I can. The last piece of information I need to share before I can take a breath and sleep is this. And so this is the literal little white book. You could take a screenshot and have it, right? And the version that'll be published is going to be a cleaned, colored, well, one of them will be colored vector version that's going to be nice and pretty. And might just be, depending upon the offer that I put forth yesterday, and I will at the end of this, designed by somebody else that's going to share in the joy of being able to participate in popping the minds of millions of people. So that said, this is the new deck for the new AEON. And what we're looking at here first, there's a couple of different types of card, of course, right? This is just a little cover I put on so that it wouldn't bend these. This is just cheap cardboard. So ignore that. Ignore that. I'm kicking around some card back ideas. I haven't really figured out what the card back's going to be. This is the Inner Sanctum card. On the back of this card is the secret to communication with your higher self. On the back of this card, or on the front, this is the back. On the front of this card, no. On the front of this card is literally, and I'm not being dramatic, I'm not trying to hold it till the end, it's the reality. Is the key to the opening the door to the inner sanctum. This is the key. Here it is, and it's on. Okay. So there you go. Now, what we have here are two other types of card. Let me get these out of the way. These are just the box. I guess I can put this here. Okay, we have two types of card here, and what we have, if you'll notice, is the same thing we have here. Here's the ascent and the descent, and they are in the deck as cards. Okay, so both are listed in. They're in the deck, but there's some other information that you'll notice here, and we're going to talk about that right now. So the first thing we're going to start with is the bottom section of the descent, meaning that this is the physical world. Let me just reiterate that. The higher world. We cannot access it. This line is the abyss. This is the lower world. To get from the lower to the higher world, we must cross the abyss. When we do, everything gets twisted. everything that's coming down gets twisted also. If this was the order, these two are pinned because of the pillars. Okay, the pillars are the things that are on the left and right. Let me get rid of that rose, pardon me. It's kind of blocking our view. You're beautiful, Rose. Okay. There's the two pillars on the left and right in black and white that are holding those signs from moving. Okay, so just to be clear, the reason that we don't flip the wand and the pentacle, although they're supposed to flip and go upside down when they go through the abyss, these two do that, right? But these two don't. And the reason these two don't is because they're fixed to those pillars. Okay, so basically you have the sword and the pentacle, or the sword and the cup, in their normal form, their normal order: wand, cup, sword, pentacle, wand, cup, sword, pentacle. And when it goes up, these two in the middle swap places and then turn upside down. Okay, right now we're looking at the lower world of the normal tarot, and we're going to look at the lower world here as well. Now, one of the things I designed with these cards, and I have to figure out from a mass production perspective how to do this, because it's not going to work like this for mass production. I redraw these all the time because they rip a lot, because they're designed to be folded. And the reason that they're designed to be folded is so that you can actually manipulate the lower world, combine elements. You can look at it from a much different perspective than you would a normal tarot deck. Okay, because you're looking at the whole scene, and then you're looking at the lower world, you're looking at the upper, you're looking at how it looks this way, you're looking at how it looks that way. So it gives you the physical manipulation of this information so that you're tactily manipulating divine intelligence. This is divine intelligence. These symbols are not an accident. They come from the idea of the 1 into the 2, which is the line, which is the wand, the cup, the sword, all these things, right? And so, you know, it's these symbols are not accidental. You're going to notice something here as well, which I did not reveal in yesterday's stream, and I'm going to reveal it right now. The lower world is in the order of wand, cup, sword, and pentacle. The order in the upper world is wand, sword, cup, pentacle. Now that we've already seen multiple times, right? But there's an important component that we haven't considered here, and you know what that component is? Gender. In the lower world, the wand is a penis. In the upper world, it's not. It's a vagina. That's right, God's a woman. Sorry, it's true. So that said, well, it's not true. It's not true. The coming Messiah is a woman. God is both. But anyway, that said, and you'll notice that I drew that here. We have the wand, but there's obviously a Vesica Pisces in the center to represent that shape. So we have the feminine wand. The feminine wand is the vagina, right? And so we have the feminine wand raining down upon the masculine wand, right? Now, in the original notes, I didn't reveal that. I kept, if you notice, I kept the outer ones blank. And this one I didn't. This is the truth told openly. Or let me rephrase that. It's the truth told openly. So the idea here is the ability to fold it up, take a look at it, look at the different elements and how they interact. You can go this way and look at those 3. You can look at these 2 and so forth. It's actually neat. There's a lot of different interpretations that you're able to thank you for the number too. I like that. Manipulate, right? And then we have the other image. One of the most holy secrets in a lot of organizations is this right here. I guarantee it. I don't know that for sure, but I'd love to speak to somebody who's a member of the higher level of OTO. The lower level people probably don't even. All right, so this is the same thing, only we have some added information here. Like, for instance, I put a word here, and then I have a little symbol up there, and I have a little symbol here on the bottom too. And then here, if you notice, that's the same thing. I have a word. And and then I have a symbol, and then a symbol. So let's take a look. This is the descent, so let's go back to the descent. The original tarot. And you'll notice that I have some additional information here. Here I have the dot. Here it's a line. Here I have the line. Here it's a triangle. Here I have a triangle. Here it's a square. Here I have a square. Here it's a pentacle. So there's something being added. There's a 1 being added. Okay? Which obviously that's exactly what's happening. It's taking us and adding something to it. So, I mean, that's like obvious. Like there's this idea that is just true. That said, there's some other information we have here. We have a word. What is that word? Listening. Listening. That's a good word. I use that word very often with respect to the cup. What is the cup? It's an empty vessel waiting to be filled. The act of listening. You could jump to want, and want is a good word. The cup is wanting. But that's only the human cup. The divine cup is not in a state of want. It's in a state of constant emptiness waiting to be filled, or it's in a state of constant fullness spewing to the world without regard. So it's different. It's not a state of wanting. It's a state of listening for somebody that needs it or something that will fill it. But it's a state of listening. Okay. Now, what does that mean? You have the idea of listening and you have the idea of speaking. This word is our state, not the higher state. We, in the scene of the descent, God is descending. We are receiving what is being descended. Right? So we are in a state of listening. If we're able. If we're able, we can hear the voice of our inner self. I've talked about it on the stream before. And so what this refers to is the place that can take place. You can't hear the divine voice unless you are in the right place to hear it. And so you have to be in the place of descent. So what that means is, because again, let's get to the truth told openly here. I'm enough secrets. What that means is if you're going to interrogate the tarot in order that you want to hear the voice of your higher self, you use this page. If you're wanting to be heard by your higher self, you use this page. So the algorithm is different depending upon the work that you're doing. Listening for the answer, asking the question. Okay, and we'll see that here on the deck. I'm going here. You'll see that on the deck here with listening and speaking. What is speaking? Speaking is us. We are in the position. This is from our perspective. God doesn't need a deck. If the deck's for us, it's from our perspective. We're looking up. And what are we doing in this case? We were wanting to have our will known. We're in a state of speaking. Another term for that is the idea of listening is the idea of reception. The idea of speaking is the idea of bestowal. God bestows, human receives. That's all we can do. We were created to receive. In fact, it's more than that. When God became self-aware, he expanded. Space happened as a reaction to that. So just slowly go through that thought for a moment. God bestows, and we receive the thing that's expanding. We are the vessel in which it expanded in. We receive. God bestowed. The thing that blew up, we are the thing it blew up in. And we both occurred at the same time. It's not like the if I push my hand into sand, that the hole happens first, or that the hole happens after I push my hand in and then suddenly the sand sinks. It happens at the same time. So depending upon what you're interrogating determines which system you use. Now, are these used for readings? No. What these are used for here are the decoding. I'm going to do a reading where I want to hear God, so I put that out. Okay? And what this is going to do is I have a shortcut in front of me that I can look at and say, okay, if I'm in a position of wanting to receive the divine mind of God, then this is where I want to be. I want to be on this list. And so when I do my readings, I can remember, don't forget to swap the order and to turn them upside down. And if I'm listening or speaking within the state of, when we're in the state of listening, we use this. Listening and speaking from the state of the other side. However, I've said here now multiple times, once you pass the abyss, everything changes. So when you're on the ascent, it's a totally different circumstance, right? Over here, we're listening and we're receiving. Over here, we are speaking and we're rejecting. The cups are empty. The sword is empty. Like the wand is upside down and not on fire. Notice that it's a feminine wand. Our wand is the feminine wand. And let's just take a look at what we're seeing here. The descent happened, and so the divine order of our world changed. And notice the two in the middle didn't. The pillars now change, and the ones in the middle stay. Okay, did everyone see that? The ones in the middle stay. The ones on the outside change when you move from ascent to descent. Do you see the value of these cards and sliding them back and forth and looking at those relationships? Okay, very powerful stuff, right? This is the key. This is the key. And simply by sliding, looking back and forth, gives you the physical way to manipulate this knowledge. Okay, I'm going to stop there with these. And we're going to get back to them in the end when I blow your minds with the secret to decoding this, to actually achieve this conversation. And it's right here. Here it is. You want to see it? You will. If you have the eyes to see. That's not true. That's the truth and secret. You can't get into the inner sanctum without the eyes to see is the truth and secret. I'm going to tell you the truth openly, how to get there tonight. And so this is the rest of the deck. There's a couple other cards that we see here. What I've done, let's put the box up here. Okay, so I have the descent here and the ascent here, just to have them out, right? And we all know what those are. We looked at it before with those, the white stuff there, the white paper notes that I had out. And then this is going to be the answer at the end. And you're going to keep this out for your work regardless. Now, I just to be clear here, the idea of the deck is to facilitate conversation. That is why it was designed. However, because of its rightness, because of its energetic connection on an octave level to the truth at the bottom and the top, you can use it to interrogate tarot, I Ching, you name it. There isn't a system it doesn't work. This is literally the whole of human knowledge, and here it goes. What I did is I took each one of these scenes. I thought I was so clever. I was a younger man back then. I mean, I had very little gray. I was about 50 pounds heavier, and it was I was healthy. I was in good shape. Different world. God bless. And did not have a child yet. And now my baby's graduating and from college, and it's just... So what I did is I take each one of these scenes, right? Like here's the descent. Okay, this is the descent scene, right? This is the normal tarot that we're used to. This is that upper world. What I wound up doing is I took each individual scene and made a card out of it. Now, why would I do that? So that we can actually physically manipulate this scene as individual pieces, right? So you put them up. This is the purpose of the work here, is not to do a reading, so it's not about shuffling cards. It's about having this diagram for understanding how to decode the conversation. God doesn't speak in words. Your higher self does not speak in words. You need to know the language, and this is the ability to decode that language. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now let's look at some cards here. What I've looked at, and let me make sure, okay. What we have here are these individual scenes as individual cards, and you'll see some symbols on top. All right? Each one has like an arrow, or like an arrow with a line. You know, you'll see one that's got like a plus with a minus. There's 4 of them, right? And so let's look at what those are. Let me get all the cup cards. There's a cup, a cup, a cup, and a cup. Okay, so here's all the cup cards. We're going to talk about these 4 in a minute. Is this the of the 5? Yeah, okay. Yep. What was that last one? All right. So here's all the cup cards. Now, we have a couple of different symbols here. Let me move the rest of the suits here. Just get them right. Okay. Now let's look at something here. Bestowal. The act of wanting to give. The act of bestowal. Water leaving the cup. Reception. Water entering the cup. Rejection. No. Lament. Sadness for being rejected. The rejected. Wanting to bestow, but being told no. Okay? And so what these are the different states of the cup, and they exist in different circumstances. Let's take a look at where these cups exist. First, we have the story of the descent. Right? The story of the descent, if the bigger version is easier for you to see. The story of the descent is the idea that when the Spirit of God falls, the pillar locks the 2 outsides, and the ones in the middle swap and turn upside down. And what you wind up with is the divine mind filling the profane cup. Mind, heart. The mind of God in the heart of man. The love of God in the mind. Right? And so those are the different dynamics that we're seeing in this particular doctrine. Right? The doctrine of the descent. Okay, here's the story of the doctrine of the descent down the tree. That's it. That's everything you need. Do you need the Zohar? No. You should read it, though. I dare you. Do you need Sefer Yetzirah? Well, you do for tarot because there's a lot of good stuff in there, but no. This is the entire body of this is half of the Kabbalistic knowledge right here on this one card. Yes, I did consider the number of drops irrelevant, the number of waves coming out of the fire, the number of... those matter, but that's later. But so you'll notice that what these are all the different individual cups with the intent of being able to manipulate them so we can tell the story, right? And we're gonna talk about that in a minute. And so I'm just gonna take these cups and put them aside, and we're gonna look at the next suit. Sword. Reception, coming into, receive. This is the sword of reception. This is the sword that we are in the state of in the descent. Okay? That's us. This is the same card. Okay? So that's referring to that. No. Notice there's nothing around it. It's clean. No. Reject. Ignore. Ignore what? We're going to find out. Divine mind. But is it? Because it's opposite up there. Divine mind is profane heart. Okay. Rejected. wanting to bestow, but being stopped. Bestowal. Give. Give what? Divine mind. Right? Also, incidentally, on my sword, it's going from smaller to larger, larger to smaller on either side. The big side refers to, like a funnel going in and a funnel coming out. In is listening, out is speaking. The act of listening and speaking is built into the sword. There are 7 balls on the handle referring to the 7 planets, the 3 elements of the tarot. The whole tarot is in this deck, 100% of it. And so this refers to bestowal, reception, rejection, lament. Okay. Now we're going to jump to the wand. And you'll notice there's a couple of different wands here. Let's start with the one that we all know. This is the wand of reception. This is the wand in the lower world of the descent. Okay. The lower world of the descent. This is our normal world. This is the tarot we all know that we think is it. So there's this thing, right? It's got 4 suits and a bunch of, and there's these 16 cards, whatever. This is the whole of tarot for a lot of people. And this is the wand from that spot, right? This is the wand of reception. We are receiving the fire from divine wand. The wand of bestowal. This is what we are receiving. Notice it's a vagina. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flames coming down onto the wand of reception. Bestowing, receiving, bestowing, receiving. This is the card of bestowal. This is the card of reception. See the difference? Okay. No. Rejected. Wants to bestow, but stopped. It's also feminine. Notice the flames are coming out and bending like they're not able to get through, right? And the center of the wand is the feminine aspect. This is a female wand. The lament. This is the rejection. Okay. What I also thought about doing, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to have a woman involved in this, is that from the respect of the ideas here of the flower. The flower has multiple states, right? The flower has a closed state, it has a opening state, it has an open state, and then it has a completely receptive state. And so, interestingly, this state would be the closed state, which is the masculine. But then as arousal, i.e., a target of the will and the desire to physically manifest that. It's not about sexuality, but there is an arousal that takes place, which is the raising of energy toward a goal. As soon as that happens, just like in the female body, things begin to change. And one of the things that begins to change is the flower begins to open. So within the act of bestowal, suddenly it starts to open, which is basically alluding to the fact that all penises are vaginas waiting to open. And that's a spiritual statement. That is the truth in secret. And I'm going to leave it there. This is the no, right? This is the rejection wand. And where do we see the rejection wand? We see the rejection wand in the ascent on the bottom, upside down. Okay? It's right there. Okay? So, and the final suit, the Pentacles. Okay, we have bestowal, reception, bestowal, reception, rejection, lament. Okay. And these change energy, obviously, as they move around. And let's take a look at that. So we'll look at the descent, and we'll look at the ascent, and we'll see if we can find these pentacles in here, right? So, for instance, let's look at the bestowal pentacle. That's going to be right here. 6 points, unicursal. Descending onto us and filling us with the body of God. That's this pentacle, which is in the act of reception. We have this here. I represented this as 10, which is really a 5-pointed, and behind it, and this will be in the art of the actual deck, is a semi-transparent pentagram in the opposite direction. So it makes 10 points, but it's actually a 5-pointed one. And you know, that's a representative here of the one upside down and the one right side up. It should be like this. It's an upside down pentagram, which refers to the genitals over the brain, basically stuck in physical reality, the flesh, the pentacle of flesh, and that is the body of God in the lower world, right? Then we have the rejection. Where do we see the rejection? We see the rejection. I'm going to wind up putting it here or here. And I'm curious who thinks where that goes. The idea of this is a pentacle of rejection. And so the idea of the pentacle of rejection is going to be here, of saying, I don't want your divine will. And notice again that those swapped in the ascent, which is the place of when you are wanting to speak your will, as opposed to hear it, which is in the descent. So, and then we have the final pentacle, and we'll see that the final pentacle is the pentacle up here, as opposed to here. They swap, depending upon the work that you're doing. But basically what we have here is the lament, and all of the pentacles that it is trying to bestow upon us is collected and can't get out, and so they just keep building up. They almost crystallize in this state of different versions that keep trying to get more complex in the hope that it'll take it, or more simple in the hopes that it'll take it. And so that's going to be up here in the rejected pentacle. This is the rejection. This is the rejected. Okay. And now, how are these manipulated? That's all good and well, Michael, but what do I do with them? Do I shuffle the deck and find out if she really loves me? Sorry. That's a little humor for the readers in the room. So, no, that's not what you do. What you wind up doing is that you lay out one of these circumstances, or you can use these as well when doing your own tarot readings, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But essentially, we have this idea here of laying out the cards in the order, in the divine order. And we know the divine order because I told you guys the divine order, and you have to believe me because I promised I wouldn't lead you astray. The divine order starts with the wand of reception. We are in a state of receiving God's will. We just don't realize it. The second is the cup of reception. And again, what does reception look like? It looks like an arrow pointed down. Like you can just slide these and get a sense of what's happening right here. Something is attempting to be bestowed and is not allowed to because this person is actively stopping it. What's feeding that? And so forth, right? But anyway, I digress. Let's go back here. So we need the cup of reception. So the cup of reception is going to be a cup with an arrow pointed toward it. Where is my cup of reception? There he is. Got stuck. And notice there's how many drops? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That little drop looks like a drop. It's going to wind up being colored, and it's going to be a drop of, well, I'll let you guess. And then we need the Sword of Reception. All right. So we'll grab the Sword of Reception, which is the symbol of the downward pointed arrow, right? And then we have the Pentacle of Reception, which is going to be the traditional downward pointing because it's the physically manifest one. The one in the holy one is either 6 points or is up point, 5 point, like the Wiccan upward pointing, referring to the idea of basically head over body, right? So we have this laid out. Now, the next thing we would do, obviously, is the other part of the scene. Let me just move these out of the way. These are the final cards, by the way. So I'm almost done with the elements. And then I'm going to hit you with the first really interesting sort of like twist. But now let's find the wand of bestowal. Okay. Then we have to find the sword of bestowal. Then we have to find the cup of bestowal. And then we have to find the pentacle. Okay. Now, the beauty of what we're looking at here is the idea that we have this, we can now physically manipulate these cards to get a sense of what we're looking at. Because what are we looking at? Normally, your average tarot reader would say, okay, well, there's an upper and a lower world, and they're doing different things. But now, this doesn't work. This is shooting upward, and it's not falling into the cup underneath it. So how is this being filled? Remember, our world is incapable of bestowal. We can only receive. If we are receiving, if something's coming to us, it's not from us. And so where's this water coming from, right? And so this doesn't work. Same thing here. The divine intelligence is floating up into, up instead of down, and we're never going to catch any of it. And so it puts us in a different position. It puts us in the no, where it's not no because we're deciding no. It's no because there's a blockage. And let me reveal that symbolism now. This is the lament. I want to give, but something says no. Let's look at the denial sword. There's two types of no here. The active no and the passive no. The active no is I'm choosing to say no. The passive no is a situation where, for whatever reason that's not willful, you can't connect. And so that is the case in this particular circumstance. So what would happen here is you would put us in a state of no, which transfers this to a state of lament. So you understand what happens now. No communication is what's going to happen between the upper and lower. Even in a state of lament, what is the sword doing? It's crying. It's crying. It's pouring out to be heard. And we're said, nah. If that makes you sad, then this work is for you. That made me sad when I thought about that for the first time. I actually cried. I'm not a crier. Although you wouldn't think that from that stream a couple, days back. But that said, though, it's powerful, right? And by physically manipulating these cards and saying, okay, well, wait a minute, does this work? What if I turn them upside down? This looks kind of right, I guess, right? This kind of looks right, I suppose. So what this is like divine heart, divine mind, I guess. I mean, but like, how do we, how do we reconcile this? Because this is what's actually happening. And so obviously there's that language of the idea that what we're doing here is installing the divine mind of the higher self into our heart. And we're installing the divine love into our mind. We experience the mind emotionally. We experience our upper self's love intellectually, mentally. That's how we access it. The language of the love of God is mental. The language of the mind of God is emotional. Therefore, that's the organ you need to use to communicate with that part of God. Is it starting to sink in? But this doesn't work because the descent has already happened. Depends upon what we're looking to do here. What are we looking to do? We're looking to communicate with our higher self. What does communicate with higher self mean to God if God is opposite us because of the abyss? Not communicating with the lower self. So trying to communicate with the higher self guarantees failure. I'm just going to leave that there. So, that said, let's look at these now, right? Let's see. Let's get all the swords and put the pentacles there. The wands. And put some cups here. Pentacle. Right? Swords. We got a wand. Here's that cup. Pentacle. And here's a sword. Okay. Now, how many cards do I have? Anyone guess? 16. There's 16 cards here. All right, this is 16 cards that represents all of the suits. You know what else it represents? The court cards. Here's the courts. But they're also the suits. Do you understand where the courts came from now? The secret of where the courts really came from? I've been telling you the truth in secret. This is the truth told openly. This is the source of the court cards. They're not people. They've never been people. They are not physically manifest yet. This is all happening in the mind of God. And then physically manifests in our world once some reconciliation takes place. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. The next card I want to show you are the four elements. Here are the four elements. Now we talked about that these are the courts. And what are the courts? What are they? Different modes of the divine mind. Which courts are these? Which one's the sword always? There's a court that no matter what suit they're in, they're always the sword. The princes, the knights. And Rider-Waite, it's the knight, but this isn't a Rider-Waite based deck, so we'll ignore that. The prince. These are the princes. Okay? All of the princes are depicted right here. One of them is a speaker. One of them is a listener. One of them is a stubborn son of a bitch. And one of them is a crier. Okay, is it starting to make sense? Where's my wand? It sounds dirty. Here we go. I'm just going to put the wand of reception on top, and I'm going to keep that as the main element for this next, for the elements. Where is the reception? Just going to keep them all in the state of reception. So here's the 4 elements in order, in the divine order of our world, right? This is the divine order of our world, the world of the receptive, the world of listening. Okay, so these are the 4 elements. We have listening, we have speaking, we have rejecting, and we have lamenting. Now, where this goes here is a very interesting question. And this is where I'm going to put it. And the reason that I chose this is that the lower world is kind of known for being opposite of the higher. It's sort of like we deny the higher world in order that we can continue to enjoy the candy of our flesh, right? And that process and letting go of that is what allows us to begin the work of moving into the inner sanctum so that we can begin the ascension. Ascension can't take place without conversation. And we can also look at these ideas as well on their own. You can look at the interplay of all the court cards, of the suits, the courts, whatever you want to call them. I don't call them either. You know, and eventually there'll be a second deck which doesn't use the tarot system. It won't use the tarot. It's going to just be the idea of bestowal, the idea of reception, rejection, and lament. It's just going to be those 4 elements. But here's the court cards and the 4 elements. Now you can also physically manipulate these. What is the idea of speaking lament? What is the idea of listening to rejection? What is the idea of rejecting lament? Rejecting lament is insisting on joy. What is the idea of listening to rejection? It's the idea of being demotivated. Right? And so these 4 elements build every single possible combination of human emotion. Whether it's 1 by itself, 2 together creating that, 3 together creating that, or all 4, there is a lot of possibilities for emotions here. And although the human emotional system is a very, very diverse and myriad system, it's really simpler than you think. There's probably maybe 12 main emotions or less that human beings experience. And there's various gradients in between, which is where we get confused. How often do we mistake love and lust? How often do we mistake thirsty and hungry? There's all kinds of different sort of, and thirsty and hungry are the same emotion. They're desire. They're a want to be fulfilled. But so this is the idea of the elements, and these are the 4 elements. Now, obviously, all these are the element of lamentation, the ability to want to bestow but being rejected. You want to bestow but being rejected. You want to bestow but being rejected. You get it? You want to give to the middle, but the middle won't take it. Listening. The ability of receiving without being blocked. It's like this without the lines. The act of rejection. The act of speaking. This is my favorite. Right. This is essentially the seed of the cube. This is the seed of the Hebrew language, starting with the 1, the 3 directions. The 3 plus the 1 gives us the cube, and so forth. And I did a very long explanation of that on the stream a couple days ago. And so this is the deck. That's everything. You've seen it all. There's nothing more to see here. There's nothing else to see. You don't have to worry about this card right here. Don't worry about it. What do you need that for? Nah, you don't need that. You don't need that. Maybe I should just put it away. Should I just put the deck away? Is everyone done? Did we get everything we needed out of this? Maybe I should save that for tomorrow. I think I'll do that. Of course not. I didn't spend 20 years studying this, and then, I'm wanting to share it, to then be divinely inspired to get it all done in a week, to then not share it. But all kidding aside, so let's look at this, which is the diagram for the descent. In fact, I'm going to use the one I drew for the sake of the stream, because it might be easier to see rather than you guys having to kind of look at this tiny little like cardboard thing, which is certainly not something that we're going to want to deal with. So let me use my black and white larger version. And this is it, guys. This is it. This is the this moment right now is the culmination of 20 years of sitting on this knowledge until I felt like I was ready to be able to actually express it, till I felt like I was ready to actually explain it, till I was ready to be able to, from my mind, put it on paper. Because it didn't come from a book. It didn't come from a source. There's no chart I referenced. There's no website I was... and this, I've had to process it mentally. And by putting it on paper in card form, to share, like for the symbol system, pardon me. Hi, sorry about that. Okay. And so what we're talking about here is the idea that when we need to activate what part of the algorithm determines on what we're attempting to do. If my attempt is to listen, then I'm going to go to this algorithm. And if my job is that I want to listen to the heart, then I know how to do that. Listen to the mind, then I know how to do that. It depends upon what I'm trying to access. If I'm trying to access information from God, then obviously I'm going to want to access the sword energy, and so I'm going to want to be in the position of the receptive cup, which doesn't make sense. It's like, wait a minute. If I'm trying to receive, then it's a sword that I want to know. It's the cup. If I'm in a state of listening. If I'm in a state of speaking and I want to be heard by God, I don't need to activate, because over here that's not going to work. There's a different kind of energy that's required to do that. And that, right? Now, it's because I just said, if I want to receive the mind of God, I need to be in a state of cup, which is unintuitive. Normally I'd think, all right, well, I need to be in sword to be able to perceive mentally God's, right? But that's not how it works now that we have the code. If we want to receive the mind of God, we need to do so emotionally. If we want to receive the love of God, we need to do so. But now if we look on this side, if I want to receive the mind of God and I'm in a state of ascension as opposed to descension, it won't work. It won't work here either. I don't understand. How am I going to communicate? How am I going to receive? How is any of this going to happen? What happened? My big, beautiful system fell apart. And so here's the secret to unlock that. It's called the Inner Sanctum. And here it is. Here's the Inner Sanctum. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth told openly. The instructions for speaking directly and experiencing lucidly, consciously with yourself. Look how beautiful that is. Look how perfect. Divine love filling our heart. Divine mind filling our mind. The body, or the will of God manifesting as our body. The body of God manifesting as our will. Who is God? Us. We are God. And when we have the ability to hear that voice and to have that conversation, there's no going back. And how do we get there? This is how. This is the secret. Gorgeous. Look at that. Look how perfect that fits. And one of the ways that you can do that is you lay it out like a table tent. And you can, from my perspective, I see this. So you lay them out as a table tent, and you can easily do that looking of having the code of how to speak when you're doing your meditation. So now, laying in front of you, you have the rules. You can now use this algorithm to have the equation of when you're in this state of ascension and you're wanting to communicate with something in the descent world. How do you do that? If you're in the descent state, how do you do it for the ascension world, right? And so you have these two ideas. And what this symbol represents is the cup of God pouring down into the cup of us, the wand of God igniting the wand of us. Remember, we have God's in ours. We have the sword of God and man meeting in the middle, sharing divine intelligence. And then we have the pentacle of God and the pentacle of man, which, what does that do? It turns, it shifts, and it moves up. Okay? And so this is it. This is all the working. Now, why are there two circles there? There's a second circle there. What's that all about? That one, you're going to have to pay for. So what I'm going to be doing is that the whole purpose of this deck is to make this information accessible to you in your home, right? And in your work, without having to rely on going to a seminar that you pay $700 for. You listen to somebody talk at you for 3 days, and you leave remembering 10% of it. What we have here is an actual, usable, actionable piece of spiritual technology. I don't know what you call it. It's a distilled version of an oracle that allows us to access parts of our soul that aren't normally through means that are familiar to us. And through this process gives us access to this knowledge, to this truth. And you could theoretically, not theoretically, you literally, just use these two cards. That's all you need. And if you had the proper memory, which is not that hard, in the upper world, the two middle swap and descent, and in the lower world, the two outwards ones swap. It's like, okay, wow. It's that simple? Wait a minute. That's it? Yeah. That's the big secret that's been hidden for 10,000 years. That's the big secret that the OTO won't tell you or whatever. Like, that's the secret that the Masons all pretend that they know and they're not talking. So the reality is that there it is. It really just comes down to the fact that you swap the two on the descent on the top in the middle, and you swap the two on the outside, on the bottom, on the ascent. That's all. And now, what does that mean is the secret. That's the part you need to learn, is to decode the difference between the falling of divine, the reception of profane, the rise of profane, and the rise of divine. The fall of divine, the rise of profane. The fall of divine, the rise of profane. That's it. Down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay? This is not a deck. This is a system. It includes the idea of the vortex. It includes the idea of the divine order. It includes the deacons. It includes, because this can be used for readings to do your own cards. You don't just have to use these cards. Now, this is a self-contained system with the goal of facilitating conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel, facilitating conversation with the soul, the higher self. The deck is called Soul Talk. The truth told. Openly. Right? Soul Talk. That's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about Soul Talk. There was one last card that I didn't show you. I didn't mean to not show you, so let's go grab it. Okay. So, This is the super ultimate secret. This is the inner sanctum, right? This is the inner sanctum. But there's another card that's also the inner sanctum. This is the inner sanctum of the lower world. This is the inner sanctum of the higher world. Okay, is everybody ready for the inner sanctum of the higher world? This is the thing you're attempting to communicate with using this knowledge. Holy Guardian Angel. Soul Talk. There it is. Okay. The 4 signs. The goal of the work. The instructions. Just beautiful. Thank you so much for everybody that listened to that. This is available right now to anyone who wants one. Contact me and we'll get it done. It's time to start sharing this. This isn't my ego being lofty. I really feel like this is information that can contribute to people who are studying this information. I think it's a really good way that we can utilize this to really get to the heart of it. I haven't even begun to touch on what this deck can do with respect to making these connections and discussing and understanding the idea of how to make this connection happen. And it's not something I'm going to do on the stream. This is available to people who want to work with me directly, whether it's in a group setting or individually, but not on a live stream. So I'm gonna use the deck on streams, but not for Soul Talk. It's designed for Soul Talk. That's what it does, and it does it great. But it's also the entirety of tarot. Just to be clear, there's the 4 aces, the 16 court cards, and how many cards are there total, including the inner sanctum and the final? 22. There are 22 cards in this deck that encompasses the entire deck. Well, yeah, but Michael, what about the small cards? Please. We're talking about going up the ladder. The small cards are keeping us down here. The small cards are a lie. The deacons are parts of our personality that we take on that aren't ours. That's what they are. And that's okay, because it lets us navigate the moment. We do. If we're going into a job interview and we need to be dynamic, I'm not going to walk in being all calm. I have to act like I'm dynamic. I have to access that part of my personality that allows me to navigate that moment. And I may need to assign a different deacon to my personality at the moment. That's what the Queen does when she has her advisors. We're going to get into this is another revealing that I'll be doing tonight, is the actual spread of how to apply this algorithm to tarot cards and to apply it to the march of the courts. We're not doing Meet the Deacons anymore, by the way. I told you guys that after the autumnal equinox we'd be switching. Well, we are. Now we're into Meet the Courts. And what we're going to be doing with Meet the Courts is I touched on a little bit the spread. I did another one of it a little bit. I took you through the story a little bit, but I kept pieces out on purpose, and I told you I would. But now that the deck is revealed, I can give you the actual full reading. And you'll notice it includes 3 trump cards. It includes the prior queen and the future prince. And it includes all the cards related to the period of time. The 3 deacons, the father, the mother, which are the king and queen, the page and the knight that made it all happen, the trial of the 3 trumps, and the 3 advisors to the queen. after the sad demise of the king. And so this is going to be the full story with this applied to it, which is the thing that I have never revealed to anyone, and I'm still a little nervous about. Not that I'm nervous about sharing it, I'm nervous about that I've kept it secret on purpose, and to reveal it, I almost feel like I'm giving away the Coke formula. But this reading is phenomenal. It's my reading. I've never seen this anywhere. I've heard people talk about the deacons, but never in the way that this is expressed. And this is very specifically designed around this system. So, and you'll notice the lineup of the cards is in a specific way, and so this is part of this magical system. This reading, these cards, along with the idea of the vortex and the divine order, is the key to the inner sanctum. It's not the key to conversation, but it is the key to the inner sanctum. Conversation happens automatically. Where do you think I found this? It was laying on the floor in the inner sanctum. I just picked it up, and I can hand it to you now, if you want it. You want one? So that said, yellow for air. This is the only version that exists. Once people want to join and do the work, obviously more will be produced at this level, this basic sort of drawing raw level, and until we get to the point where we can hopefully enroll another to help facilitate it. Okay. I just looked at the chat. Yeah, Luana, right? It's true. It's funny because I've even heard people say the Bible is a manual. Well, kind of, and let me explain why. Okay, we're going to read today's upper room. I've done this before, but now, people talk about the tarot is evil. You know what someone said to me today? When I was trying to explain what I was going to do on my chat tonight, they said, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." I said, first of all, you're an idiot. The word wasn't witch. Anyway, so, but yeah, so that said, today is September 24th. Everything in the Bible can be interpreted by the tarot, and it doesn't take a stretch. There's no stretching here. I'm just going to read the statement, and you tell me that this isn't directly what I just told you. Because again, this is, and I wasn't denying that. This wasn't me being lofty. This is literally the combined total of human knowledge, and I'm about to prove it. This is just a little book that I randomly get. We get this at our church, and we give it out to the parishioners. Genesis 1:20-23. Clothe yourself with a new person created according to God's image in justice and true holiness. Clothe yourself with the new person created. That's God descended as flesh. According to God's image, right? Twisted and down. In justice, the balance, and true holiness. Come on. So mote it be. So that said, that's the deck. And it's going to be beautiful when it's done. I've been kicking around card backs. I've been kicking around at different things with respect to visual stuff. The deck's done. The knowledge is done. There's nothing to be changed on the inside other than making it pretty. But it needs a graphical overhaul and some other components that I would like to get done before actually, putting it out mass produced. So, all right. So that said, then, as far as what we have to speak about tonight, applying the algorithm to readings, the order in the vortex, and the inner order. These are all very important subjects. These are things that relating to, like, for instance, listening, speaking, rejecting, and lamenting, I touched on, right? This is a subject that I kind of, a little bit, But I really want to get to the heart of what this is, like, because this is once again, and if there's any mathematicians in the room, or people that sort of have an interest in computer science or math, this is also a functioning computer. That's right. It's a functioning computer. What you're able to do with those 4 elements and those 16 cards, it's a 16-bit computer system. And when it comes to the different polarities of the plus, plus, minus, minus, plus, minus, minus, plus, and then the error correction built into those 16, it's a functioning computer. It's slow. I wouldn't actually do processing with it, because each tick could take 2-3 seconds of time, and for you to do anything on a computer takes a million ticks in a quarter second for us to not see things go jagged, but it would function as a decision engine, as an algorithm for providing an answer to a question in a pattern. And yep, I am going to be building an app version. So basically, you put in your will, speak heart, and it'll give you the conversion for how to do that with ascension or descension. But that shortcut is going to stymie growth, and so it's the reason I haven't already done that. Even for myself, I won't even code that for myself. I'd rather use the cards. I like the tactile feel. I like the ability to move them around, and show them to people, and put them on top of other cards. All that matters. And so, from that perspective, I'm going to take a moment, recenter, and come back in a sec to continue and talk about how to apply this algorithm to your readings. Because what we've talked about here is the deck itself to do what it does, which is to elicit this response whereby you enter the sanctum, achieve conversation. However, it's because of its intrinsic connection to these other bodies of knowledge, or rather, due to the intrinsic connection of those bodies of knowledge to the one truth, and that this is a distilled version of that one truth, you can use it in tarot very effectively. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit. So just give me a minute to heat up my coffee. And I'll be back soon. I appreciate everyone for sticking with me, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Say hi. Mm-hmm. What are you doing up late? You have school tomorrow. No, it's the weekend, Dad. I'm getting up for cartoons. Okay, this is Melanie. She's a dachshund puppy. This is advice for anybody who's considering getting a dachshund, so that some things you should know before doing that. The first thing you should know before getting a dachshund is don't get a dachshund. Don't do it. They chew everything. They bark all the time. They dig holes everywhere. My lawn looks like a garden of pomegranates. Was pulled out of the ground. It's something else. And I love her. Every minute, every inch of this little being. Look at her sweetness. And also, just to be clear, they're bred to hunt badgers and win in a fight. So that little girl is completely the most fearless thing I've ever seen in my life. She is intense. She is fierce. All right, baby? Okay, you too. I'm going to go back to work now. Okay? I'm trying to spread some wisdom. All right. That's everything right there. That's everything. Just the joy of an animal that does not know the pain, does not know the garbage that we carry. All she knows is be. We can learn from that, can't we? There's a lot we can learn from them if we were just like quiet and watch. You know who I learn a lot from? Flowers. They're just in a constant, beautiful state of being. They're both in a state of reception and bestowal at the same time. That's what we are trying to be. The secret to this whole system is don't miss the purple and be the flower. At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is the idea of bestowing, i.e., look at my beauty. I'm this little flower still doing my thing, minding my own business, just taking in the sun. Reception. Taking in the sun. Taking in the carbon dioxide and putting out oxygen. Just doing its thing. This act of reception and bestowal. And in that moment, something very special happens. You see the flower, and beauty occurs. Beauty is created. At that moment, it's no longer just a flower being. It is an object. It becomes real. The idea that we're talking about here is the same thing with us. The idea here is that we are just being. We're not a being, the noun. We're just being. Until we're observed, until we communicate. And then we become something. And the thing that we become is based on the language. It's based on the thing that we define ourselves as. So there's the magic. We are what we define ourselves as. Which we? The upper we. The upper we defines us, the lower we becomes it. So communicate with the higher self what you want to be, and you will. And it's not an evolution. It's instant. And it never changes. You can't go back. The change is instant. You don't slowly heal from the wounds of your life. You drop them all immediately and they never existed. And you recognize that they never existed. They were all a product of your mind through the act. Let's use the deck. Let's use it. What are we looking at? We want to be in the state of both. That's what we want to do. We want to be in this state of both, where we're receiving everything in the proper manner. But how do we figure that out? There's so much different math here. I'm not sure what to do. Well, there are answers, and the answers come from speaking to yourself and to open that conversation up. It's just a matter of those rules. Once we've shed of all the things that we don't need, we're empty to be filled with nothing but the truth. And so we need to ask that question. What is it that I need to get rid of? So that's a question. So we need to be in the state of listening. So we're going to use this chart. What are we asking? I need the answer. What should I be doing next? That's divine mind. Where do I hear divine mind? In my profane heart. Stop listening with your ears. Stop thinking about what it sounds like to your thoughts. It's a feeling here. That's the vocabulary of interacting with divine mind. You interact with divine mind through profane heart when you are asking. When it's time to receive the answer, this isn't going to work. It's not effective anymore. This is the old way. And so what we need, rather, is to have the new order. Right? And that's why we have this idea here of the having the cards available to you to have that conversation. And to then take these, line them up in the proper order, and so we see that everything is being cascaded down properly in the method that it's supposed to in order to have that communication take place. This is what happens once you've found that union in between. This is the world of listening and the descent of the higher self. This is the state of speaking and returning to the higher self from the lower. Where we are right now, where we live right now, is here. Another way to look at that is here. We've had the fall. It's already taken place. And now we need to make the decision to continue that trip up. Now, the idea of unlocking or finding out what the secrets are and how to go about those really has a lot to do with determining what it is you're actually trying to seek, and at the end of the day, what is the algorithm that is determined to best achieve that. And when you're able to do that, finally, you get the truth. And when you get that truth, like I said, there's no going back. It's just simply the idea of having this flow of truth in you that anytime you enter a situation, anytime you are told something from somebody, you process it differently. Anytime you're asked a question, you come from a different place when thinking about that answer. And it reforms the way you make your decisions. And that's the important thing that matters here, because one of the biggest decisions we make every single moment is, who am I pretending to be right now? Because all we are is a product of divine mind manifested physically in the lower world. Divine mind in the lower world as a body. But the mind is still divine. And so we're always choosing who we're going to be to interface with this world, because it's not who we are. None of this is who we are. And so we have no choice but to pretend in order to interface. We have no choice but to make up a character that we use to communicate with people, that we call a personality. Your personality is a lie. Your personality is created by your ego in order to fool you into thinking that you're the one in control. That's all it is. It's a tool for keeping you from ascending. It's a tool for keeping you from going through that growth. This one on top. This goes on the bottom. There we go. Okay. So, is there a divine order? Is there a divine order to these cards? Yep. Oh, Michael, you can't just say that there's a divine order to those cards and then not tell us what it is. Yeah, I can. Okay. I just did. All right, so what we're going to look at now is how we utilize this information in our readings. So, I covered the idea of the Inner Sanctum, and I covered the idea of where the knowledge came from. So the Vortex and the order and the algorithm and the deck and, the key and all this stuff. That's fine. But now we need to talk about, real life. Okay, what about the lower world that we're kind of bouncing in between this decision of whether or not we're going to stay where we are or ascend? We're in the middle of that, back and forth kind of all the time. So we use tools like the tarot and other things to navigate this world. This is designed to get you access to the Inner Sanctum. But what about, that job interview I have tomorrow, or that love interest, or that thing that I need to learn about, or that thing that happened to me that I want to discover more about, or whatever the case may be. And so we interrogate our world using the tarot. Right? And it's just a beautiful tool, as we all know. And, as your vocabulary increases, so does the complexity, and so does the accuracy and all these things, which is good. But there's some work that you don't need to rely upon your intuition and the synchronistic process of picking cards to divine. The answers are already there. We just need to access them. And so the way that we do that with something like this is through what I had done recently was tell the story of the princess. And so I'm going to do it again, only a little bit different this time, because I didn't reveal the whole story. I didn't give everybody the whole story. This is my spread. This is not something that I learned at a seminar or read in a book, or it's something that I've developed over a very long time. Again, I've been reading cards for close to 40 years. I've been teaching for 25 and change. And over those years, you develop techniques to teach, and more importantly, also techniques to use to fulfill the goal of the work. If your goal is to get a simple answer, a question answered, you can do that with one card. And anybody who's seen my one card readings, they're pretty intense. And we're going to get to the hardest of information there. One card can tell you so much with respect to doing a reading when you're just simply interrogating a circumstance. However, when your question is, how do I ascend? How do I descend? Things like that. Those are big questions that require some more answers. And what this is who am I really? Where did I come? What is my story? And so first I'm going to tell you the story of the March of the Courts, which is basically the story of the Queen and how she came about, and ultimately also the idea of the birth of her son, which is the knight that is going to court the next princess, and so forth. And we're going to get through that. And I did a basic version of this spread on the stream yesterday to kind of seed this whole concept. And there were several pieces I left out on purpose, and so we're going to get to that now. And there's a few ways that we can do this here. Incidentally, this is me. This is my birthday. These are my cards. And so anyone who takes the time to learn this system and apply it to this reading is going to have some very deep insight into who I am. But that said, though, what this is you utilize the charts or the wheel. I prefer the wheel because it's easier to read as far as like a correspondences, as well as time and some other things that I just like. But that said, you gather all the cards that are relevant, and then you place them in the following order. And I use the story not only to as a mnemonic device for the positions, but it's also an idea of